on Sprue Review. My name is Violet Sun, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Imperial Fists Praetor in mkIII Power Armour. This is a single resin miniature for the Imperial Fists in the Horus Heresy game, produced by Forgeworld. With the pre-order date for the second edition of the Horus Heresy game now set, I thought it was about time to take another look at miniature for those rules. This will also be the first time I'm taking a look at a resin mini on this channel, and there are quite a few differences, but we'll get into that when we're actually looking at the pieces. First of all, let's have a look at the packaging for this model. Now, this single figure comes in quite a compact little blister pack. Artwork on the front displaying the studio painted miniature, which looks very nice. It's got quite a simple bit of text to say what game it's from, what the model is, and just a little bit of warning text at the bottom. Now, this is quite plain, but it's quite small, so there's not a lot of extra space to fill up with more detail. And I think this is quite a good ratio of how much picture of mini to background and other text. Yeah, you're definitely looking at the figure here and not a big blank space. And because this is a blister pack, around the back you actually get to see the parts of the miniature. In this case, a bunch of resin and the base. Let's get to opening up this pack and have a little look at the actual contents properly. So this is what you get inside your Imperial Fists Legion Praetor blister pack. Quite a number of parts, there's 12 parts this mini plus the base, all on these resin casting blocks rather than on sprues. A piece of paper. I thought this might actually be fold out and be instructions, but it is in fact just a piece of paper with some warnings on the back. No instructions for this model, although because it's a resin figure, the parts breakdown is a lot more obvious than is often the case with plastic kit. As there are no instructions with this model, we're going to skip that normal part of the video entirely and go right to looking at the sprues. Now I'm going to take a look at the main torso and legs piece to begin with, and one of the first things you'll notice if you're used to plastic models is there's a lot of detail on this, and because it's a resin model it allows for there to be detail all the way around. With a plastic model, if you wanted a stud on this side of the leg, you'd have to have that side of the leg be upright in the mould, but then you wouldn't be able to have the studs around here, and you'd have to break this down, this single piece down, into many pieces to try and get this level of detail. It's I would say, in my opinion, the main advantage of resin is just makes it much easier for the sculptor to put details wherever they want and really make a character miniature like this look fantastic. There are of course many downsides to resin. It's usually more expensive, not because the material itself is more expensive, but because it takes a lot more man hours to produce a model like this. It's a lot more handwork of filling the molds. You can't really mechanize it like plastic molds. A machine does most of the work with a plastic miniature once it's been set up, of course. And there are other disadvantages with resin. First of all, you will want to wash a resin kit. If you've got a resin kit, clean it, because there will be mold release on it and it will mess up your paint job if not. Like I said, let's actually have a closer look at this model and really enjoy some of the details. There's a lot of very archetypal Imperial Fist detailing on this model, going from the clenched gauntlet right in the middle of the chest, the axes, which are usually associated with the Phalanx Warders, a group of Imperial Fists that guard the Temple of Oaths on the Phalanx, an elite order within the Imperial Fists. And then you've got a Templar Cross, another elite group within the Imperial Fists. So there's a lot of thematic detailing on this model, but there's some that's just quite nice generic detailing. This kind of hammered, dimpled texture on the leg is a piece of detailing that's been used on Space Marines since the very early 90s. Jez Goodwin was putting this on Space Marine captains, so it's nice to see kind of a classic piece of detailing still being used within the Horus Heresy series. And this style of Mark III armour with the kind of stepped Mark II armour design hidden underneath extra armour plates, I really enjoy it. It's a lot of extra detail, and it's really nice for painters because you can do a lot of highlighting and detailing and weathering, and it all has some depth to bite into. The neck joint on this is fairly standard. I think you might have to do a little bit of modification if you want to put a normal ball joint Space Marine helmet in there. I would probably just file off the bottom of the ball joint on the helmet to get it to sit on this rather than trying to drill that out. I'm going to move on to the next little casting block, which has the head with the helmet crest on it. Really nice piece of sculpting there. One thing that often happens with these kind of hair crests is people will sculpt all the hair very, very straight, which isn't really how they look. If you look at sort of Roman reenactors and stuff, it always ends up kind of flopping at the ends, and that's a really nice little detail the sculpture of this mini's included. This sprue also has these two little tasset plates that sort of sit on the Marine's hips and thighs as extra layer of armour. Not a common thing on Mark III armour, but definitely something that a captain in a very special artist set might well have, and just more layering, more detail, more cool. And moving on to the third sprue, this has the backpack, which is a fairly standard Mark III backpack. There's a little bit of extra detailing, more of that sort of hammered embossed metal around the top of the backpack, which is a nice way of tying it into the rest of the model. And a pair of shoulder pads. This one has some nice little filigree in the corners, again just an extra little touch to make the captain stand out as extra special. And a really, really nice done Imperial Fist logo, excellent detailing. This is one of the points, again, if this was a plastic model, you couldn't have this slight little tuck in here. You just can't have stuff like that in a single piece like this. The molds just won't allow for it, whereas the softer mold material for a resin mini will. And stuff like this, like the clenched fist, you can get a little dimple in there where the fingers and thumb meet. It's just nice to have really nice detail all the way around. Possibly one of the less detailed parts of this model is the cloak. It's quite nice and it is very well fitted. It looks like there's plenty of space for the backpack to drop into without too much trouble. It's just a little plain. I've gotten maybe a little spoiled with some of the other capes that have come out that have had, logos and extra detail on them. This feels a little plain, but it does give you space to do plenty of freehand or use a nice fancy water slide transfer or deckhold if you're in the US. Yeah, it looks okay. The drapery on it's very nice, and the detail from all angles. This sort of angle on a plastic cape's usually a little ugly, whereas here it's very nice. I'm going to move on to the arms, and I'm going to bring up some rather more negative points of resin miniatures at this point. You can see obviously there's lots of little bits of flash going on, which are easy enough to clean up, but it's often more common on resin miniatures to have that kind of flash than on a plastic mini. And of course you do still get mold lines. That's a problem with both plastic and resin. But one problem that resin has a lot more than plastic is holes. As you can see here, at the very tip of the sword, there's a great big air bubble where there should be resin inside that sword tip, which is going to make that very weak, and obviously it's a visual blemish. It's something that you can sort out very carefully, sort of pushing some epoxy putty in to help fill in that void, or I've seen some people do super glue and then sprinkle on baking soda, but then you have to like reshape the tip of the sword, and it's a lot more work. Having said that, Forgeworld's quality control is pretty good, a lot better than it used to be. So far that one very awkward air bubble has been the only one I've spotted in this model. And when you have stuff like these very fine separate fingers, I think that's pretty impressive. Obviously an air bubble in one of those, you'd have to resculpt quite a lot of the hand to repair it. And the last couple of pieces, you get a kind of nice resin base topper, quite nicely sculpted and lots of good texture in that. And I think with this miniature it's almost mandatory because of the pose of the legs. I think you could probably build up your own base, but I will probably use this one. And the last piece is a very nice sword sheath, which does have the problem of most 40k sword sheaths of being too short and too narrow to actually contain the sword that it's meant to hold, but it will give them that. I don't think many people check that kind of thing when they're looking at models, but it's just an oddity that often happens in 40k and similar models. Now, I've spoken a little bit about the differences between resin and plastic miniatures. I like both. I've been in the hobby for quite a long time and have done a lot of plastic kits, a lot of resin kits, and metal kits as well. I think resin is, for things like characters, is fantastic because you get the extra detail that you really want for the characters, but it is always a bit more of a pain to work with. So plastics do have some advantages, especially if you're building a lot of models. I find plastic much easier. Now normally I would speak about what I'm going to do with this miniature, and I'm not going to disappoint. There is going to be an upcoming Tale of Four Gamers series on Ian's channel. I imagine quite a few of you have come to this channel from there in one way or another. We're going to be doing a new series on the Horus Heresy starting sometime soon. We haven't actually got a firm date as to when the first video is coming, but it is coming. So this model is going to become part of my Imperial Fists force. I'm not, however, going to build it as a Praetor. It's going to get converted. I'm going to kit bash this with the new plastic 40k Primaris Emperor's Champion and hopefully end up with my own custom model of Sigismund, as the one that Forgeworld makes is it's okay, it's quite nice, but it's not what I want. It's, for me, that's what Sigismund looks like during the Great Crusade, and I want him at the Siege of Terror, being the Black Sword, being quite crazy. He's definitely lost himself in being a space marine at that point. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to doing that conversion. I haven't actually got hold of an Emperor's Champion yet, but they're quite easy to pick up. If you've got this model and have done a cool conversion, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. But I'm going to say a little different today. If you're planning on picking up the Horus Heresy, I would love to hear which legion you're going to start collecting, or which legions that you start collecting, as I can imagine some people are going to do both a loyalist and a traitor force. Thank you very much for watching. If this video has been helpful, please drop a like on it. If you want to see more reviews of similar products, I've got a bunch on my channel already, and subscribing is the quickest way to be informed of new videos when they come out. Thank you very much for watching, and happy hobbying.